I was offered to the Frostfang pack as a political sacrifice, quiet, unremarkable, forgettable. A tribute meant to be ignored by the cold alpha who ruled these mountains with frost in his veins. Yet when Kieran Frost looked at me, the air tightened as if he recognized something I didn't know I carried. He shouldn't have come close. He shouldn't have spoken. But at midnight, under a sky shivering with stars, he whispered my true name. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, like it, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. The mountains rose like jagged teeth around the narrow pass, their slopes buried under layers of winter that refused to melt. Frostfang territory felt nothing like the plains Lyria had grown up in. The air here carried a weight that pressed against the lungs, as if the land itself judged every outsider who dared step through. She kept her pace steady beside the escort. The rope burns on her wrists had faded to pale bands, but each step reminded her she wasn't traveling by choice. 3 Frostfang warriors flanked her in a loose triangle, giving her more space than necessary. Not courtesy, caution. A young woman rode at the front, dark braid, sharp posture, eyes that scanned everything with the focus of someone trained to see threats before they formed. Elen, daughter of the Beta. Her voice cut through the wind without effort. "We'll reach the gates within the hour." She didn't look back when she spoke. "Keep close. Strangers tend to misjudge the terrain." Lyria didn't answer. She focused on the crunch of snow under her boots, the cold creeping through her coat seams. A faint ache pulsed at the base of her skull, the same place that had throbbed since she'd been taken from her home pack and labeled tribute. A political bandage, a tool, an offering. Whatever word they used, it ended the same. The path narrowed until the trees pressed in. Scents shifted, pine sharpening, ice thickening, something wild threading beneath it. Wolves, strong ones. Instinct prickled at her spine, though no wolf inside her answered. Her inner world remained unchanged, quiet, vacant, the same emptiness she'd lived with since childhood. Elen finally reined in her horse as the forest thinned, revealing towering iron-bound gates carved with runic patterns. 2 guards stood atop the walls, their expressions rigid until they recognized their party. Then their postures tightened even more. "Who is she?" one called, though he already knew. "The tribute," Elen replied. The word dropped like a stone. The guards exchanged a glance, pity, suspicion, something else Lyria couldn't name, then opened the gates. Inside, Frostfang Keep spread across the clearing like a fortress carved from the mountain itself. Warriors trained in the yard, their movements crisp, half-shifts flashing in brief bursts of fur or elongated limbs. No one paused long enough to stare, but their awareness settled on her like cold fingers brushing the back of her neck. Rowan awaited them on the stone steps. The Beta was broader than the others, steady in a way that spoke of decades spent carrying responsibilities too heavy for most. His gaze swept over her once, assessing without warmth. "You will be placed in the guest wing until the Alpha decides your role," he said. "Elen will instruct you on pack boundaries and expectations. Obey them." Lyria held his stare, refusing to drop her gaze the way submissive wolves did. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, faint as a shifting breeze. "She understands," Elen answered for her. Before Rowan could respond, the courtyard quieted. Not fully, just enough for the air to feel altered. Lyria turned. Kieran Frost crossed the yard without hurry, yet every wolf shifted instinctively to make space. Snow clung to the dark edges of his coat. His expression remained impassive, but something beneath it sharpened when his eyes landed on her. Silver stirred in them, not bright, not threatening, just aware. Lyria's breath hitched before she could stop it. It wasn't fear. Something else tightened low in her chest, recognition that made no sense. Kieran stopped a few paces away. "Bring her to the keep," he instructed, voice even. "She stays under my watch until further notice." Rowan stiffened. Elen blinked. Warriors paused mid-swing. Tributes weren't placed near alphas. Lyria didn't move until he shifted his attention fully onto her. The world did not still, yet the air seemed to lean inward. "Walk with me," he said. Not a request, not unkind either. She followed him up the steps. pulse unsteady for reasons she refused to examine. Because the worst part wasn't his order. It was the quiet certainty that he'd known she would obey. Inside the keep, warmth rose from stone vents cut into the floor, carrying the scent of burning spruce. Lyria adjusted her sleeves, unsure what to do with her hands as Kieran led the way down a corridor lit by lanterns shaped like frozen blossoms. Warriors stepped aside when he passed, heads dipping in instinctive acknowledgement. He didn't acknowledge their bows. His focus stayed ahead, steady, unflinching, until he stopped before a tall wooden door. "This will be your room for now," he said. His tone remained controlled, yet not distant, more like someone trying to maintain a barrier everyone else expected of him. Lyria took in the chamber as he pushed the door open. A single bed, a carved dresser, a thick rug in muted forest colors. Not luxurious, but far more than she expected for an offering sent without honor. "You're not what I anticipated," Kieran added quietly, still standing in the hall. Lyria turned toward him. "What did you anticipate?" He hesitated, not long enough to seem reluctant, but long enough to reveal calculation. "Someone afraid to look at me." She didn't answer. Not looking away was the one rebellion she still possessed. A shadow of something unreadable crossed his expression. Not irritation, not approval either, more like unease. A knock echoed from deeper in the corridor. Rowan's voice followed. "Alpha." Kieran exhaled once, barely audible. "Rest. Elen will bring you food shortly. Do not wander the keep without her. Some spaces require a wolf's presence to enter safely." Lyria stiffened. "Meaning?" "Meaning certain instincts respond poorly to unfamiliar scents." His gaze held hers for a long moment. "Yours is unfamiliar." He left without further explanation, boots striking the stone floor in measured cadence. Rowan fell into step behind him, murmuring something too low for human ears. Lyria caught only fragments: counsel, pressure, time running thin. She closed the door. The silence inside felt heavier than the corridor. She set her pack on the floor, more habit than need. She owned almost nothing now. Her fingers brushed the worn leather strap, and a memory surfaced uninvited. Her mother's hands fastening that same strap years ago. Whispering a promise Lyria hadn't understood then. "If they take you, keep your spine straight. Anything can be taken except the way you carry yourself." A soft rap at the door pulled her back. Elen stepped in with a tray. Steam rose from a bowl of root stew, filling the chamber with the hearty aroma of thyme and meat. She placed it on the small table near the bed. "You handled the arrival better than most would." Elen didn't quite smile, but the tightness around her eyes eased. "Frostfang didn't want a tribute. That wasn't our decision." Lyria sat on the edge of the bed. "Your alpha made it sound like I'm a threat." Elen's eyebrows rose. "If you were, we'd already know." Not comforting. Elen folded her arms, studying her more openly now. "May I ask something?" Lyria braced herself. "Go on." "When Kieran looked at you in the courtyard, did you feel anything strange?" Lyria's pulse stumbled, not sharply, but enough for her breath to shift. She kept her voice level. "Strange how?" "Most wolves react to the alpha in some way. Submission, instinctive caution, heightened senses. You reacted differently." Elen tilted her head. "Like you recognized him." "I've never seen him before today." Recognition isn't always about sight. The comment hung between them. Before Lyria could respond, a faint vibration rippled under her skin, so slight she almost dismissed it as fatigue. A tension she couldn't explain tightened across her ribs, then faded. Elen noticed. "You all right?" "Yes," too quickly. Elen didn't push. "Rest. Tomorrow will be complicated." When she left, Lyria remained seated, staring at the door long after it closed. Complicated didn't worry her. Tributes were treated like pieces on a board, moved, ignored, sacrificed. What worried her was the subtle pull she'd felt in the courtyard, returning now like a breath against the inside of her chest. Not a voice, not yet. Just the hint of something stirring, where nothing had ever stirred before. And it had awakened the moment Kieran Frost looked at her, Night settled over Frostfang Keep with the kind of hush that felt intentional, as if the walls were listening. Lyria had eaten, paced, tried to rest. None of it quieted the low thrum in her chest. It wasn't pain, more like a distant drumbeat muffled beneath layers of earth. She finally rose from the bed and moved to the narrow window. Snow drifted across the courtyard in loose spirals. Warriors were still training under torchlight, their movements sharp and controlled. Every shift of muscle reflected discipline she had only heard about from travelers. Frostfang wolves were known for precision, not warmth. A soft scrape in the hallway made her turn. The handle didn't move, but footsteps stopped outside her door. Not heavy, not cautious. Controlled. Lyria. Kieran's voice carried through the wood, calm, low, steady enough to raise the fine hairs along her arms. She hesitated before opening the door. The alpha stood alone, no guards, no coat. Only a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, leaving faint scars visible in the torchlit corridor. His eyes held none of the sharpness from earlier. Something quieter lived there now. "Elen informed me you haven't slept," he said. She leaned her shoulder against the doorframe, keeping the barrier between them. "Did she also inform you that I don't answer to you?" A flicker barely there touched his mouth, not quite amusement, more like surprise that someone dared say it aloud. "You're under my protection," he replied. "That means your condition is my concern." She folded her arms. "Protection implies choice. I didn't choose this." "No," he agreed, "but I won't treat you like a bargaining chip. Others might." That unsettled her more than any threat would have. He studied her a moment, gaze steady but not invasive. "Has anything unusual happened since you arrived?" The question rooted her feet to the floor. Unusual. As if he sensed something had shifted around her since stepping into his territory. Her voice stayed even. Nothing worth reporting. His jaw didn't tighten. He wasn't that transparent, but his stance sharpened, shoulders aligning. "If something changes, you tell me before anyone else." "I'm not one of your wolves." "You're on Frostfang land," a quiet beat. "That's enough." The torches flickered as a breeze swept through the hall, stirring a faint mix of scents, spruce smoke, worn leather, and something distinctly his. Not overpowering, not intentional, but her lungs reacted before her mind did, drawing a breath too deep, too slow. She forced herself back into the present. "Why are you really here?" Kieran didn't look away. "Because I caught your scent again." His tone held no accusation, only fact. "It's unusual." Her pulse stumbled. "Unusual how?" He shook his head once. "It doesn't match any known lineage, and it doesn't behave like a muted wolf or a dormant one." His eyes narrowed slightly. "It's almost as if it's searching." She gripped the doorframe to steady her hands. That faint inner vibration rose again, thin as a trembling wire, then vanished. Kieran's gaze flicked to her fingers. "Did you feel that?" "No," too fast again. A muscle in his cheek moved, subtle as a heartbeat. "You're not safe outside this wing tonight. Some council members arrived early. They'll want to inspect the tribute before morning." Her breath thinned. "Inspect?" He nodded once. "They're here to confirm your purpose." Purpose, the word tasted wrong. Kieran glanced down the corridor, then leaned in, not enough to cross into her space, but enough that she felt the shift in the air between them. "Lock your door," he said quietly. "If anyone knocks after I leave, you ignore it." Before she could respond, he stepped back. The distance between them seemed to snap like a stretched thread released. He left without waiting for agreement. Lyria closed the door and slid the bolt into place, palms damp. The vibration returned, stronger this time, warming beneath her ribs as if something inside her had rolled in its sleep. Not awake. Not yet. But definitely rising. The forest always whispered at night. But tonight it called. Lyria stood at the edge of the frostwood, her breath turning white in the cold twilight. Behind her, the packhouse windows glowed with the warmth of celebration. Voices, music, laughter spilling into the dark. Everyone was inside for the Alpha heir's 21st birthday. Everyone except her. She didn't belong among polished smiles and silken dresses. She was the girl who carried trays, cleaned hallways, blended into corners like a shadow nobody questioned. But the wind didn't agree. It tugged at her hair again, harder this time, as if urging her deeper into the trees. Lyria swallowed. "Not tonight," she murmured. She turned to leave. And froze. A low hum rippled under the ground, a vibration she felt more than heard. The forest pulsed once, like a heartbeat answering her own. Then came the scent. Warm, wild, unmistakably alpha. Her pulse tripped. No, impossible. He was supposed to be inside, surrounded by his people, toasting to his future. Yet the presence in the woods was undeniably him. Kieran Frost. She backed away, heart stumbling. Not because she feared him, but because every time he was near, something inside her chest tightened, like a lock trying to twist open. A twig snapped. She spun. The shadows parted. Kieran stepped into the moonlight, the silver glow tracing the sharp lines of his jaw, the dark fall of his hair, the unmistakable authority that clung to him even before his wolf surfaced. His eyes, storm gray, restless, hungry, found her instantly. He exhaled like he'd been searching for miles. "There you are," he said quietly. A shiver climbed her spine. She tried to bow, alpha air. "Don't." The word was soft, but carried the command of a future king. "You don't bow to me." Her throat tightened. I shouldn't be here, the celebration." "I left it." She blinked. "Why?" "For you." The world narrowed to the space between them. She felt her pulse in her palms, in her throat, in every place his gaze touched. Kieran stepped closer. "I need to ask you something," he said, voice low. "And you have to answer me honestly, Lyria." Her breath hitched. "What is happening to me when you're near?" The forest went silent, as if holding its breath for her answer. She had none. Because she was asking herself the same question. Lyria's pulse thrashed in her ears. Kieran had never spoken to her like this, never stepped toward her like he was afraid she might disappear if he blinked. "I don't know what you mean," she whispered. Kieran's jaw flexed. "You do." His voice was calm, but his wolf leaked through the edges, sharp, electric, impossible to ignore. He took another step, closing the distance until the cold night air warmed between their breaths. "When you walked past me in the hall this morning," he said, "I felt like someone grabbed my spine, like something inside me recognized you before I even turned." His eyes searched hers, raw and unguarded. "That has never happened to me before." Lyria's fingers curled into the hem of her plain dress. "I didn't do anything," she said. "I know." Kieran lifted a hand as if to touch her, then stopped himself, lowering it slowly. "That's what scares me." The forest wind stirred, brushing through the branches overhead, as if echoing his unease. Kieran dragged a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm supposed to be stable, controlled. My father trained me to be unshakable, and yet..." He looked at her, the storm in his eyes darkening. "Every time I see you, my wolf pushes forward so hard I can barely breathe." Heat spread across Lyria's skin, frightening and strange. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured. "You don't even know me." Kieran gave a soft, humorless laugh. "That's the problem. It feels like I do." He stepped back, just an inch, but enough for her lungs to catch air again. Then he said something she wasn't prepared for. "Have you ever felt pulled?" He gestured to his chest. "Here, like something is waking up." Lyria's breath caught. Because she had. All her life she'd felt a strange pressure behind her ribs, something coiled, sleeping, waiting. On quiet nights it throbbed, like it wanted out. And she'd always thought it was fear. She shook her head quickly. "No." Kieran's eyes locked on hers. He knew she was lying. But instead of calling her out, he turned toward the deeper woods. "Come with me," he said, "just for a minute." Lyria stiffened. "I can't." "You can." His voice softened. gentled in a way she had never heard him speak to anyone. "There's something in the forest tonight, something old." He glanced at her over his shoulder. "And it's calling both of us." The wind whispered through the trees again, her name this time. Lyria swallowed, the pull tightening inside her chest. "Kieran," she breathed torn. He extended his hand, not touching but offered. No command. No title. Just a boy whose wolf was losing control. "Let me show you," he murmured. Her fingers trembled, and she stepped toward him. Branches swayed overhead as Lyria followed Kieran deeper into the forest. He kept a careful distance, close enough for her to see the tension in his shoulders, far enough that she never felt cornered. A pale mist clung to the ground. The air smelled sharper, like the moment before lightning strikes. Kieran paused near a ridge where roots twisted over ancient stones. His breath clouded in the cold, though the night wasn't nearly cold enough for that. "You feel it too," he said quietly. Lyria kept her gaze on the earth. "I don't know what this is." "You do." He didn't sound accusing, more like someone stating a truth he wished weren't true. He crouched near the stones. Lyria hesitated, then joined him, the forest pressing close. "There's old magic here," Kieran said. "My father brought me once after my first shift. The elders call this ground a remembrance site." Lyria brushed her fingertips over a ridge in the stone. The surface was warm, alive. "Kieran, why bring me here?" He exhaled slowly. "Because when I felt that pull in my chest today, it pointed straight at this place. And you." Lyria's stomach tightened. She wasn't supposed to be here. Omegas didn't enter sacred pack grounds unless summoned. If the guards found her, the consequences wouldn't be light. "You're troubled," she said softly, "even if you don't say it." He glanced up sharply, surprised she'd noticed. "My wolf reacts to you in ways I can't predict." He pushed a palm against his chest, as if holding something back. "I'm supposed to be in complete control, yet when I'm near you, he claws to the front." A low rumble escaped him, not a growl, something quieter, strained. Lyria stepped back out of reflex. Kieran instantly stilled the sound, breathing through what felt like a battle inside his skin. "See," he huffed a short breath, "this isn't normal." Lyria hugged her arms around herself. "Maybe I'm the one who shouldn't be here." "You're exactly where you should be." His answer came too quickly, and he seemed to realize it. Kieran straightened, rolling his shoulders to steady himself. "Lyria, look." The stone beneath them glowed faintly, blue threads crawling along the cracks like veins waking up. The light pulsed once, slow and steady. Lyria stumbled back, heart lurching. "What is that?" Kieran stared at the glow, jaw slack. "It's reacting." "To what?" He turned to her, expression unguarded. "You." The air shifted, warmth rolling outward from the stone in a slow wave, brushing over her skin like a hand made of heat. Her knees weakened. Kieran caught her arm before she slipped, his grip firm but careful. His touch wasn't rough like she expected, his fingers trembled slightly. The only betrayal of how much this moment rattled him. "Easy," he murmured. "Just breathe." She did, and the ground responded again. The light brightened, swirling like smoke trapped under glass. Kieran lifted his face, stunned. This has never happened for anyone, not even during the Alpha trials. "I'm not," her voice cracked. "I'm nobody." "Stop saying that." His hand tightened around her arm, not painfully, but with intent. "There's something inside you waking up, and this place recognizes it." A sudden gust tore through the trees. Leaves spiraled, the mist thinning in a sharp whip of wind. Kieran turned, instincts flaring. "We need to go, now." "Why?" He listened, every sense sharpened. Then his eyes locked on hers, fierce. "Because the elders felt that surge." Her stomach dropped. "And they're already on their way." Pulled Lyria behind a thick stand of pines, his movements sharp but controlled. The forest felt tighter now, branches leaning inward, ground humming beneath their feet. Somewhere behind them, the glowing stone slowly dimmed, as if it had given everything it intended to give. "Kieran, slow down," Lyria whispered, tripping on an exposed root. He steadied her with one hand, the muscles in his forearm rigid. "I'm not letting the elders find you here." She blinked. "Why not? I didn't do anything wrong." "You touched a remembrance stone and woke it." His voice wasn't loud, yet it held enough urgency to sting. "They'll demand answers I know you can't give, and they won't care that you didn't do it on purpose." A branch cracked somewhere to the east. Kieran's head snapped toward the sound, body lowering instinctively, his senses reaching outward like invisible feelers. Lyria watched him, how smoothly he shifted from air to hunter. His breathing grew slow, measured. His pupils thinned, the faintest gleam of silver flickering through. His wolf was at the surface again. "Kieran," she whispered, "are you?" "I'm fine." It wasn't entirely true. His voice rasped a little, like something deeper pushed against it. "Stay close." She swallowed. "We can just tell them we were walking." "They'll smell the surge on the air." His gaze cut back to her. "They'll know it came from you." Lyria's heartbeat stumbled in her chest. Not racing, just uneven, like her body wasn't used to this kind of fear. "My aunt will think I broke another law," she muttered under her breath. Kieran's expression shifted, brief but unmistakable, concern, then something darker underneath. "She's hard on you." Lyria shrugged, unsure how to answer. No one asked about her aunt. No one cared enough to notice. But he had. Kieran placed a hand on the tree beside her, leaning just enough that she felt the heat radiating off him. "I'll handle the elders. They won't drag you into this. You can't fight your whole council." "I won't need to fight anyone." His tone changed, firm, calculated. "I just have to distract them." A distant howl rolled through the forest, long, rising, a signal rather than a threat. Lyria flinched. "They're close." Kieran's fingers flexed against the bark. 3, maybe 4. His nostrils flared slightly. "Elder Thane is leading." She had heard that name only once, in a whisper, and it had not been kind. "What do we do?" she breathed. His answer came without hesitation. "We split." Lyria stared at him. "What?" "They'll expect us together. If they find only me, I can steer them away from the ridge." He paused. "If they find you alone, they'll take you for questioning." Her stomach tightened. Kieran softened his voice. "Lyria, trust me." It shouldn't have been easy. He was the Alpha's son. She was an Omega on borrowed grace. Their worlds didn't intersect. Yet something about the way he held himself, alert, protective, almost afraid for her, made that trust bloom without warning. She exhaled slowly. "Where do I go?" He pointed toward a narrow, shadowed path leading downhill. "Follow the slope until you see the old water trough. There's a crevice behind it, small, but no elder can shift quickly enough to squeeze through. You'll be safe there." Another signal howl echoed, much closer this time. Kieran stepped back from her, jaw tightening with decision. "Go," he said. Lyria hesitated. "Kieran." He turned toward the sound of approaching footsteps, his wolf rising enough to sharpen every line of him. "I'll find you," he murmured. "Just run." And she did, feet kicking up cold earth, breath unsteady, the wind pulling at her clothes as she fled into the darkened slope. Behind her, Kieran walked toward the elders alone. Lyria pushed through low branches, trying to keep her steps quiet even as her lungs strained for steadier air. The slope dipped sharply, loose soil sliding beneath her boots. She caught herself on a jagged boulder, fingers stinging from the scrape. The forest here felt different, older, heavier. Each tree seemed to lean inward as she passed, like they were listening. A deep thrum pulsed under the ground again, not as bright as before, but unmistakable. "Not now, please, not now." She crouched behind a tangle of ferns, forcing her breathing into slower, quieter pulls. Her aunt's warnings crawled to the front of her mind. Omegas cause trouble when they wander where they don't belong. Lyria swallowed hard. She wasn't trying to cause anything. A twig snapped somewhere behind her. Not near, farther up the ridge, but the sound still sent heat rolling down her spine. She angled her ear toward the forest, listening for voices. None, only the rhythmic crunch of disciplined steps. The elders. Lyria slipped from the ferns and moved faster. Leaves brushed her calves as she jogged downslope, searching for the old trough Kieran mentioned. She had only seen it once years ago, when the pack used this area for training drills. Back then, it had been nothing but a cracked wooden basin half swallowed by moss. Her foot hit a patch of slick mud. She slipped sideways and caught herself on a stump, breath shuddering. "Keep moving," she murmured under her breath. The wind shifted, carrying faint notes of unfamiliar scents, sage, iron, something almost metallic. Elder Thane often wore a vest infused with medicinal herbs, a habit older wolves mocked privately. Lyria had always thought it smelled like winter and smoke. The scent grew sharper. They were closer. She quickened her pace. A moment later she saw it, the trough, tilted and blanketed in dried leaves, leaning crookedly against a rock. Moonlight caught the rusted nails along its rim. Relief loosened her shoulders. She approached the narrow crevice behind it, barely wide enough for a body to slip through sideways. Roots curled over the entrance like thick fingers gripping stone. Lyria touched the edge of the gap, testing its width. She could fit. A rustle rose behind her. Not human steps, lighter, quicker. A wolf moving in a sweep pattern. Her pulse jolted. She pressed herself into the crevice, turning her body until her shoulder blades slid past the tightest point. Cold stones scraped her back, grounding her focus. She inched deeper until the shadows swallowed everything but the rim of moonlight outside. She flattened her palms against the inner wall, holding still. The wolf's padding steps drew closer, steady, purposeful. She couldn't see it, but she felt its presence through the thin bite of air between the rocks. A low sniffing sound brushed against the trough. Lyria held her breath, chest aching with the strain. If she inhaled too sharply, even that might give her away. The wolf lingered, huffing a short exhale, then padded off in another direction, searching. Her muscles cramped from holding so still, but she didn't dare shift. Minutes passed, slow, grinding. Then a new noise drifted through the trees. Kieran's voice, muffled by distance yet unmistakable. "I'm here," he called, calm, even, the air addressing his elders. "You're looking in the wrong place." Lyria's throat tightened. He was drawing them away. A deeper voice answered, distant, clipped. "Elder Thane." She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sharp, probing. Another voice chimed in, Beta Rowan's baritone, steadier, though tinged with confusion. She strained to hear, but the conversation faded as they moved uphill. Silence settled back over the slope. Lyria released a slow, fragile exhale. Her legs trembled from the tension. She kept still a little longer, waiting until even the faintest scent of elder herbs evaporated. Only then did her mind begin to drift, thinking of Kieran standing alone in their path, offering himself as the only suspect, deliberately shielding her. Why? He didn't owe her anything. Their lives barely brushed. And yet, he had chosen her tonight without hesitation. A warmth curled low in her chest, strange, unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. She closed her eyes in the cramped dark, steadying her breath as the question pressed in from all sides. What happens when the elders realize it wasn't him? Kieran stood in the open, his hands relaxed at his sides, though everything in him braced for impact. Elder Thane emerged first, broad-shouldered despite his age, gray braids hanging over a coat stitched with rank symbols. His wolf pressed close beneath his skin, evident in the taut lines around his eyes. "Kieran Frost." Thane's voice carried the weight of old authority. "You triggered the surge." Kieran dipped his chin once. "I was near the ridge, that's all." Beta Rowan stepped beside Thane, scanning the woods with a soldier's practiced eye. His brow creased. Something powerful flared here, strong enough to rattle the border markers. Thane's gaze sharpened. "Show us." Kieran motioned toward the ridge. "I can take you to the stone. After that, I don't know more." Rowan frowned. Alone, you rarely wander this far without a patrol. Kieran kept his voice even. I needed air. Thane huffed a short breath, half disbelief, half irritation. Air does not light ancient rock. Kieran didn't flinch. Then maybe the stone is failing. The elders exchanged glances. Kieran noted the shift, Thane distrustful, Rowan thoughtful. If they pressed him, he'd need to lie with more precision, but not yet. Every extra second gave Lyria more distance. Thane stepped closer, sniffing the air. There is another scent here. Kieran's heart punched, once against his ribs. Rowan lifted his head, inhaling slowly. I smell pine, cold earth, and... Kieran interjected before he could finish. Probably the training patrol from earlier. They ran drills along the slope. Thane narrowed his eyes. There was no training scheduled tonight. Kieran cursed inwardly. Then a scouting group, he countered. I don't track every patrol that moves. You track most, Rowan murmured. Kieran forced a shrug. I'm not perfect. Thane stared at him a long moment, trying to read the tension beneath his skin. Kieran kept his breathing even, his shoulders loose. Wolves didn't just lie with their words, their bodies betrayed them. His wolf chafed under the restraint, pushing against the inside of his chest. Thane's voice dropped. You're hiding something. And you're searching for something, Kieran replied, tone mild. Rowan stepped between them before the conversation sharpened further. Let's inspect the stone. If something awakened it, we'll see traces. Kieran nodded and turned toward the ridge, leading them slowly, deliberately choosing a route that skirted far from the trough where Lyria hid. Behind him, he heard Thane mutter, his pulse is too steady, he's masking. Rowan answered, soft but audible, or he's becoming the alpha he's meant to be. Kieran didn't react. He guided them along a path lined with wet leaves until the faint blue residue from the stone came into view. Thane crouched immediately, pressing his palm to the surface. A faint glimmer responded, then faded. Rowan's breath caught. It hasn't done this in decades. Thane straightened slowly. This is no accident. Kieran kept his face blank. What are you thinking? Thane studied the stone again. A bond trigger, perhaps. Rowan lifted a brow. Unlikely. The heir's bond would be formally tested. Thane's eyes slid to Kieran. Unless something awakened it early. A cold stillness crept into the moment. Kieran folded his arms. My wolf is quiet. Is he? Thane's gaze flickered, sharp and probing. Kieran didn't blink. Yes. A rustle swept through the trees, small, distant, harmless, but Thane's head snapped toward it. Rowan shook his head. Just a night creature. Thane finally turned away from the ridge, frustration tightening his movements. Whatever caused this is still in these woods. Kieran spoke before Thane could elaborate. If you want to keep searching, I'll join you. Otherwise, I'm returning to the estate. Thane studied him again. Too long, too direct. But eventually, he waved a hand. We'll continue alone. Go. Kieran inclined his head and walked away, posture unruffled. Only when the forest swallowed the elders, footsteps behind him did his mask crack. He moved at a near run toward the slope. Toward her. He reached the trough minutes later. Lyria, he whispered low, not loud enough to carry distance, just enough for anyone hiding close. A soft shuffle answered him from the shadows. Lyria slipped out of the crevice, dust clinging to her sleeves, her expression tight with worry. Are they gone? For now. She stepped closer, voice barely a breath. Did they believe you? Kieran met her eyes. No, he said. Not even a little. Scanned the slope one last time before motioning for Lyria to follow him down the narrow path. The wind had shifted since the elders left, cooler, sharper, carrying the faint tremble of unsettled magic. The forest watched them with a kind of strange alertness, every leaf too still. Lyria stayed close but not clinging, her steps quick to keep pace. They questioned you, she said quietly. I heard something in their voices. They questioned everything. Kieran didn't soften the truth. She deserved honesty, even if it scraped. Thane smelled the surge. He'll look for whoever caused it. What if he finds out it was you? Her voice shook, though she tried to steady it. He won't. Kieran didn't say it with arrogance. He said it like he'd made peace with the cost. They reached a fallen log near a small clearing. He stopped beside it, scanning the tree line before sitting. Lyria hesitated, then lowered herself onto the other end, leaving a respectful space between them. The night hummed. A small tremor ran through her hand before she tucked it beneath her cloak. You shouldn't have lied for me. I didn't lie. Kieran rested his arms on his knees, leaning forward. I told them what they needed to hear. That's different. No, it is. Her gaze held his, unexpectedly direct. You risked your position, your father's trust, all of it. Kieran's jaw shifted, once subtle. You think I'm worried about my position? You should be. There was no resentment in her tone, only clarity. You're the heir. Everything you do is watched. I know. And he did. Grown up under observant eyes, under expectations that weighed like iron. But tonight, those pressures felt strangely distant, blurred. Lyria exhaled, breath shaking in the cold. If they discover I was the one who touched that stone. They won't. This time, his voice held steel. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his expression, perhaps trying to understand his insistence. When she finally spoke again, it was quieter. I didn't mean to wake it. I know. He angled toward her slightly. What did it feel like when the light started? Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. Warm, like, she hesitated, choosing words carefully. Like something recognized me before I understood what was happening. Kieran swallowed a flicker of recognition. You felt that before. Lyria's lashes lifted. What makes you say that? You flinched when I mentioned the pull earlier. He didn't accuse, didn't push, just offered the observation. Silence stretched. She looked at her knees, tracing a faint scratch on her cloak. Sometimes at night, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper, I feel something move inside me, not physically, just a pressure, like a presence trying to wake. She glanced at him, uncertain. That sounds ridiculous. It doesn't, his voice lowered, not even a little. A leaf dropped from a branch above them, spiraling between their feet. Lyria followed its descent, her throat tightening. Wolves don't awaken this late, she murmured. I'm 18. Most shift by 16, sometimes younger. There are exceptions, Kieran replied. Rare ones. She gave a small, humorless huff. My aunt always said if something inside me ever woke, it would only cause trouble. Kieran's shoulders tensed, an instinctive reaction he didn't bother to hide. Your aunt doesn't know you. Lyria blinked at a certainty. Before either could speak again, a distant horn echoed from the direction of the village, low, controlled, unmistakably official. Lyria stiffened. That's a council horn. Kieran rose, senses sharpening instantly. They're calling an emergency assembly. She pushed to her feet, fear flickering in her eyes. Because of the surge. Because Thane thinks something in the pack has changed. Kieran turned to her fully. And he's right. The trees rustled, carrying the sound of approaching footsteps from the distant path. Kieran held out a hand, not touching her but steady, decisive. We have to move, he said. Whatever happens next, you're staying with me. Corridor outside the training yard was empty when Lyria stepped into it, yet the air felt thick, charged, as if someone had been waiting for her. She turned the corner. Kieran Frost stood there. Not rigid like royalty. Not cold like the alpha air she'd seen from afar. He looked hunted, as though something inside him had driven him here long before she arrived. Their eyes met, and the strange pull she'd been ignoring all morning snapped taut, like a thread between them suddenly yanked. Lyria's breath caught. Kieran's jaw tightened. Lyria, he said, quiet, but the sound of her name in his voice was too intimate, too sure, as if he had spoken it 1,000 times in dreams. Her pulse stumbled. Alpha Air. He flinched at the title. Then he stepped closer. Not to crowd her, not to intimidate her. To study her, The way someone examines something they've been searching for, terrified they'll lose it again. "You shouldn't walk alone right now," he said. His tone was calm, but beneath it she heard a tremor, barely restrained panic. Lyria's brows drew together. "Why?" Kieran hesitated, and for a heartbeat she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he exhaled, low, rough. "Because someone is watching you." A chill shot across her skin. "Watching me," she whispered. Kieran nodded once. His shoulders were tense, as if fighting an instinct to simply pull her behind him and shield her from the world. "Yes, and I don't like the scent of whoever it is." Her heart skipped. "You smelled them on me." "No," he said. "I smelled them on the path you walked before you reached the yard." That was somehow worse. He stepped closer again, slow, cautious, as if afraid she'd run. "Lyria," he murmured, "I made you a promise yesterday. If anyone in this pack meant you harm, you wouldn't face it alone." She swallowed, hard. "You don't even know me." Kieran's eyes flashed with something primal. "That's the problem," he said, voice low. "I don't know you, and yet." He shook his head, unable to explain the rest. The thread between them thrummed. Lyria forced her voice steady. "Who do you think is following me?" Kieran's gaze sharpened. Alpha-like, dangerous. Someone who already crossed a line last night. She froze. "You mean?" "Yes." His growl was soft but lethal. "The wolf who tried to follow you after the feast." Her stomach knotted. She remembered that shadow in the trees, the crunch of leaves behind her, the feeling of being hunted. She thought she imagined it. "Do you know who it was?" she asked. Kieran's silence was answer enough. Her eyes widened. "You do." "I will handle him," Kieran said, stepping closer until the air between them hummed. "But until I do." His voice dropped, possessive in a way that made her body shiver. "You stay near people, preferably near someone strong enough to fight beside you." Lyria lifted her chin. "You mean near you?" He didn't deny it. "Not what I meant," Kieran murmured, "but what I want." His hand lifted, slow enough that she could move away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her sleeve, barely. But the touch sent a jolt through both of them. His breath hitched, hers caught. He pulled back abruptly, as if burned. Before either could speak, a sharp whistle cut through the air from the training yard. Both turned. "We'll talk later," Kieran said, voice strained. "Don't go far." Then he walked away, shoulders tight, fighting something wild inside him. Lyria watched him go, her blood still humming with the warmth of his touch, the warning in his voice, and the terrifying truth in his eyes. Someone was watching her. And Kieran Frost wasn't sure he could control what he'd do if they tried again. The rest of the day moved like water through trembling fingers, too fast, too heavy, impossible to hold. By afternoon, Lyria had settled into the healer's annex, sorting dried herbs into glass jars while Elder Marin lectured Etta about potion ratios. The familiar scents, lavender, blister leaf, moonthorn, usually grounded her. Not today. Every few minutes her eyes flicked toward the doorway, expecting a shadow, a footstep, a scent that didn't belong. Or him. Kieran hadn't returned after training, but the echo of his touch still lingered on her sleeve, warm, unsettling, magnetic. "Lyria," Marin called, snapping her from her thoughts. "The moonthorn is going bitter. Stop crushing it like it insulted your entire bloodline." Lyria blinked and loosened her grip on the mortar. "Sorry, I'm distracted." Etta snorted, probably thinking about the alpha air. Then, with a dramatic gasp, or the way he looked at her this morning. Lyria nearly dropped the pestle. "He didn't look at me." "He did," Etta insisted. "And if he looked at me like that, I'd probably faint, or demand compensation, or both." Before Lyria could retort, a soft knock sounded at the door. Marin waved a hand without looking up. "Enter." But the moment the door opened, the air changed. Dominance rolled in like a quiet storm. Lyria didn't need to turn to know who it was. Kieran. He stepped inside, calm on the surface, tension thrumming just beneath, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on her. Something in him eased. Only slightly. Marin sighed. Alpha air. To what do we owe this visit? Did someone sprain a muscle pretending to impress you during training again? No, Kieran said, though he didn't look away from Lyria. I'm here for her. Etta elbowed Lyria so hard, she almost choked on air. Marin raised an eyebrow. For Lyria, why? Kieran hesitated a fraction, just long enough to reveal discomfort, before answering with a perfectly neutral tone. She left something behind. Lyria blinked. I did, what? Kieran didn't answer. He simply said, walk with me. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even a request. It was concern, wrapped tightly, hidden beneath his alpha composure. Marin studied him with unnerving perceptiveness. She finishes at sundown. She may leave then. Kieran stiffened, and for a moment, the air pulsed with dominance strong enough to crack stone. Marin, he said quietly, this is not a matter that can wait. Lyria's stomach tightened. Etta's eyes sparkled like she was watching the greatest romance scandal in Pack history. Marin finally nodded. Very well, Lyria, go. Lyria set down her tools and stepped toward Kieran, feeling Etta vibrate with excitement behind her. The moment they exited the annex, Kieran released a breath he'd clearly been holding. You're safe, he asked, voice low, tense, almost angry with himself. Yes, Lyria said softly, I'm safe. For a heartbeat, relief washed over him so visibly she felt it in her own bones. But then his expression hardened, alpha instincts rising. I found him, Kieran said. Her breath froze. The wolf who followed me. Kieran nodded once. He's been tailing you since morning, close enough to watch, not close enough to scent properly. Who is he? She whispered. Kieran's jaw clenched. He looked away, voice rougher now. My cousin. Shock slammed into her. You're what? He's been unstable for weeks, Kieran said, and I should have noticed sooner. Lyria tried to steady her breathing. Is he dangerous? Kieran's eyes, usually fierce, looked almost helpless for a heartbeat. That's what I'm trying to figure out. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the heat radiating off him, the turmoil swirling beneath his skin. Lyria, he said quietly, if he approaches you again, you run. Don't wait, don't try to speak to him, don't think, just run. Her throat tightened. And you? His answer was immediate. I'll find you. The words sank into her, heavy, certain, protective enough to warm and terrify her at once. The wind shifted, carrying a faint, unfamiliar scent from the forest edge. Kieran stiffened. His head snapped toward the trees. Stay behind me, he murmured, voice turning lethal. Lyria obeyed without question. Because something was coming. And Kieran felt it first. The forest greeted them with a stillness that didn't belong to late afternoon. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Kieran moved ahead of Lyria with slow, calculated steps, each one silent despite the carpet of fallen needles. His shoulders, usually carried with a kind of controlled authority, were tightened in a way she had never seen. He wasn't stalking prey. He was preparing to intercept family. Stay within arm's reach, he murmured without looking back. If he's watching, he'll test distance first. Lyria closed the gap, her pulse tapping unevenly at her wrist. She scanned the tree line, searching for movement, but the only thing she could hear was Kieran's heartbeat, steady, but layered with tension. A twig snapped deeper in the woods. Kieran froze. His wolf surged so sharply that the scent of ozone scraped through the air, his tell for near shift. Lyria whispered, he's close. Kieran's voice dropped rougher now, too close. Another sound, soft, deliberate, slid through the canopy. Lyria's breath tightened, but she didn't step back. She forced herself to look in the direction Kieran faced, even as unease crawled up her spine. Kieran shifted his stance, placing himself in front of her fully. He's following pattern, he muttered, staying just far enough to unsettle, not enough to confront. Why? She asked. Because he's not hunting. Kieran paused, jaw working. He's circling. Circling what? You. She opened her mouth to argue, then shut it again when a faint metallic scent carried on the air. Not blood, something colder, sharper. Fear. Desperation. She couldn't place it. A shadow moved between two pines. Not a real shape, more the suggestion of one. Kieran tracked it instantly. Arden, he called out, voice steady but laced with warning. You don't need to hide. Silence answered him. Lyria swallowed. He isn't going to step out. That's what worries me, Kieran whispered. Another snap, closer this time. Kieran's body shifted instinctively, the line of his back broadening as if his wolf was pressing against skin. His hand lifted slightly, signaling her to stay behind him. Then a low, wavering growl drifted from the shadows. It wasn't aggressive. It was unhinged. Kieran flinched, just barely. Lyria had never seen him react like that, not even when facing seasoned warriors during drills. He whispered, "That's not how he used to sound." The growl faded, replaced by uneven breathing somewhere to their left. Lyria stepped sideways just enough to try and glimpse the source, but Kieran reached back, fingers brushing her arm, an unspoken no. The contact grounded her in a way she didn't expect. "Kieran," she murmured, "what does he want?" His answer was quiet and painfully honest. "I don't know anymore." Before she could process the worry threading through his voice, a second scent bloomed across the clearing, one she recognized from earlier. Arden. But stronger now. Closer. Too close. Kieran inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. His eyes brightened, not fully shifting, but enough to flash the warning of an alpha air pushed past his limit. "He's moving behind us," Kieran said. The ground rustled, leaves disturbed in a quick, darting pattern. Lyria's nerves prickled. She spun with Kieran, catching a fleeting blur between trunks. A shape, a shoulder, a shock of dark hair, then nothing. Kieran stepped forward, voice heavy. "Arden, stop running like we're enemies." Silence again. Then a whisper drifted out, barely audible. "Kieran." Lyria stiffened. The voice was wrong, thin, frayed, as if scraped raw. Kieran exhaled slowly, the sound threaded with grief. "Come out," he said quietly. "Let me help you." The forest remained still, the figure hidden. But something changed. The watching shifted. Focused. Not on Kieran. On her. Kieran noticed at the same moment. His stance snapped tighter, a protective edge slicing through the air. "Lyria," he said under his breath, "stay behind me no matter what happens." Before she could respond, a branch cracked directly above them. Kieran grabbed her arm and pulled her sideways, just as something dropped from the canopy. A shape moving faster than instinct. Kieran twisted mid-pull, catching Lyria around the waist long enough to pivot her out of the falling shape's path. They hit the ground in a rough slide over pine needles, his arm braced behind her head to keep it from striking a root. The impact above them sounded like a body hitting bark, hard enough to break something. Kieran was on his feet in a breath, positioning himself between her and the figure crouched in the dirt a few feet away. Lyria pushed herself upright, heart drumming unevenly as she studied the newcomer. Arden. Kieran's cousin looked nothing like the proud young warrior she remembered glimpsing at pack gatherings years ago. His skin seemed stretched too tightly over sharp cheekbones, lips cracked, hair tangled like he hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. His shoulders twitched in tiny, restless motions, as if every muscle argued against stillness. But it was his eyes that froze her. They flicked between colors, his wolf pushing, then retreating, trapped in a battle neither side could win. Arden's gaze locked on her. Not with recognition. With fixation. Kieran stepped forward. "Arden, you're scaring her." Arden blinked as if the words had to travel through water before reaching him. He tilted his head. "You brought her into the woods." "You were already watching her," Kieran replied. I had to. Arden's voice cracked in odd places. She keeps glowing. Lyria's breath caught, not because of his words, but the way he said them, like a secret only he could see. Kieran's stance sharpened. Arden, look at me, not at her. Arden's lips twitched into something between a smile and a flinch. You hear it, don't you? The whisper in the dark. His gaze snapped back to Lyria, intense enough to prick her skin. It follows her. Kieran growled under his breath, not anger at Arden, but something darker, protective, primed. Lyria rose slowly, palms open. Arden, she said, choosing steadiness even as her nerves rattled. No one is whispering. He jerked. You don't smell it. Kieran cut in sharply. Enough. But Arden didn't flinch from the command. That alone sent a bolt of unease through Kieran's expression. Arden straightened with unnatural stiffness, sniffing the air. You're hiding her. I'm shielding her, Kieran corrected, voice low. There's a difference. Arden's eyes flickered wildly. She should have been told. Told what? Lyria whispered before she could stop herself. Arden focused on her again. You don't remember. Kieran's body snapped into full alert. Arden, he warned, don't. Arden ignored him. He stepped forward. Kieran blocked him instantly, the 2 inches of space between them crackling with tension. Arden leaned sideways, trying to look past Kieran to Lyria. You were there, at the river, years ago, you saw. Kieran shoved him back, not hard, but firm enough to snap Arden's attention to him. That's enough. Arden struggled against the push, breath rasping. She remembers more than you think. Lyria stiffened. Her mind flickered, brief, fragmented impressions she had spent years burying. Water rushing, a hand slipping from hers, a pair of gold eyes in the dark. No. Not now. Kieran caught the change in her posture. Don't listen to him. Arden's head jerked as if pulled by an unseen string. He doesn't want you to know. Kieran's voice tightened. Lyria, stay back. But Arden lunged, not at her, but toward a tree trunk, bracing a trembling hand against it as if trying to steady his world. He whispered something so softly that even the wind strained to hear. They're coming. Kieran's face drained of calm. Who? Arden's breathing hitched. His eyes went fully wolf for a full second, then snapped back, wide and terrified. The ones who marked the river. The air snapped cold around them. Kieran grabbed Lyria's wrist, pulling her behind him again. We're leaving. Arden didn't chase. He backed away like a hunted animal, slipping through the trees so fast it was as if the forest swallowed him whole. Only the echo of his final whisper remained. And it clung to Lyria long after he vanished. Kieran didn't slow until the woods thinned enough for sunlight to force its way through the branches. Even then, he kept Lyria close, jaw locked, steps sharp with purpose. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. And that frightened her more. When they finally reached the outer path leading back to the village, he released her wrist, but only because he had to. His hand hovered inches from her elbow, ready to catch her again at the slightest stumble. Lyria steadied herself and looked back at the forest. Arden was long gone. Only the faint rustle of needles marked where he had stood. Tell me what you noticed, Kieran said quietly. Lyria blinked. Noticed. He faced her fully, expression unreadable. You didn't just hear him, you reacted, like something he said meant more than it should have. She hesitated, fingers curling around the edge of her cloak. Kieran, Don't soften it, he murmured. I need to know. His tone wasn't an order. It was something closer to pleading. Lyria exhaled slowly and chose the truth, at least the part she could give words to. There was a moment, she said. When he mentioned the river, something surfaced, a memory that didn't feel complete. Kieran's gaze sharpened. You've never mentioned that before. Because it never felt real, just flashes. She searched for a better way to explain. Like I'm looking through someone else's nightmare. A muscle behind Kieran's cheek tensed. Not anger, worry so deep it carved shadows beneath his eyes. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If the memory is tied to Arden's condition, you need to tell me everything. Even fragments matter." Lyria nodded, forcing her mind to settle. "All I remember is water, a strong current, and eyes, gold ones, watching from the other side of the riverbank." Kieran stilled. The forest had grown quiet behind them, but the world seemed to press inward around that single detail. "Gold," he repeated softly. "Yes." He let out a breath that sounded like it scraped against something inside him. That wasn't Arden. Lyria's stomach tightened. "How do you know?" His wolf changed color after his first shift. "It's amber now. It has been for years." She frowned. "Then who?" Kieran cut her off gently. "Later." His attention drifted back to the tree line, instincts bristling. "We shouldn't linger here, not if Arden isn't the only one watching." They walked in silence toward the village edge, the roofs of the healer's annex, and the training grounds beginning to appear through the thinning branches. Lyria kept pace beside him, but her thoughts refused to settle. Every new step seemed to press another unanswered question into her ribs. Kieran glanced at her more than once, as if checking she hadn't slipped into danger simply by thinking too hard. "You're shaking," he said quietly. She hadn't noticed. Her hands had curled into fists at her sides, tendons pulled tight. "It's not from fear," she said. He studied her carefully. "Then what is it?" Lyria struggled for the word. "Uncertainty." Kieran nodded as though he understood that completely. Uncertainty is worse than fear. Fear ends, uncertainty lingers. A beat passed, and it makes people reckless. Her gaze snapped to him. "I'm not reckless." "No," he agreed. "But today proved how quickly you're being pulled into something you don't even see." His meaning hit her like a sudden drop in the path. "You think I'm in danger because of Arden's behavior." Kieran didn't answer right away. He waited until they'd crossed onto the gravel path leading toward the pack square. Only then did he stop walking. "You're not in danger because of Arden," he said. "You're in danger because he's not the only one acting strangely." A chill rippled across her skin. "Who else?" Kieran shook his head. "Not here. Walls have ears, eyes too." He lifted a hand, but stopped before touching her, hesitation flickering across his features as if he didn't want to overwhelm her. "You need to stay close to people tonight," he said instead. "Etta, Marin, anyone you trust." "And you?" she asked. He held her gaze, something fierce flickering behind his calm. "I'll be exactly where I need to be," he said, watching the borders and watching for him. The way he said him left no doubt. Arden wasn't finished. And neither was whatever had marked the river years ago. Before she could ask anything else, a horn sounded from the village center, sharp, urgent, a warning call rarely used. Kieran's head snapped toward the sound. "That's the council horn," he muttered. "They never summon it this early." He started forward, then paused, turning back to her. "Lyria," he said, lowering his voice, "stay behind me when we enter the square, no matter what they announce." Her pulse kicked hard. "Kieran, what do you think this is about?" His eyes darkened, not with anger but foresight. "Something shifting in the pack," he said, "and I don't like the direction it's turning." They walked toward the gathering crowd. The horn sounded again. Louder, the pack square pulsed with unease long before Lyria and Kieran stepped into view. Warriors lined the perimeter, their postures rigid, eyes fixed on the raised stone platform where the council stood beneath the carved sigil of the Frost Pack. Villagers gathered in tight clusters, whispering behind hands, glancing toward the forest as if the trees themselves had delivered the summons. The horn hadn't stopped echoing in Lyria's bones. Kieran's stride slowed as they approached the crowd. Tension rolled off him in controlled waves, enough to make wolves step aside without being asked. "Stay close," he murmured. She didn't argue. The pack's mood shifted like unsettled wind, all sharp edges and suspicion. Something dark hummed beneath it, an undercurrent that hadn't been there yesterday. As they reached the front, Elder Ryden stepped forward. His silver hair was tied back, his ceremonial cloak fastened with an obsidian clasp depicting a wolf skull. The sight of it made Lyria uneasy. That clasp was only worn during serious accusations or judgment. Kieran exhaled through his nose once. A controlled, irritated gesture he rarely let anyone see. "Great," he muttered under his breath. "He's leading the announcement." Lyria felt him tense when she followed his gaze. Elder Ryden wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking directly at her. A ripple of whispers swept through the square. Kieran shifted half a step in front of her, blocking Ryden's stare. The elder raised his voice. "Pack of Frost Hollow, thank you for answering the call." His tone carried authority, but not wisdom, more like someone who enjoyed the weight of the role a little too much. "We gather because our borders have been compromised." A hush fell. Compromised. Lyria felt Kieran's attention sharpen beside her. Ryden continued. "A scent trail was discovered this morning near the eastern pines. An unfamiliar wolf, one strong enough to mask itself from our guards." Kieran's jaw tightened. "Arden." Lyria glanced at him. "They know already." "They know something," he said. Ryden lifted a scroll. "We traced the disturbance to a location near the healer's housing, where an individual of our pack was seen alone at dusk." Lyria's stomach dropped. She didn't like where this was going. Ryden unrolled the parchment with slow satisfaction. "This wolf, whoever he may be, made contact with someone inside our borders, someone he followed." His gaze slid across the crowd before returning to the exact place Kieran shielded. Lyria felt the weight of the crowd's collective attention shift toward her. Kieran sensed it instantly. His stance widened, protective. The air thickened with dominance, enough that several wolves lowered their eyes without meaning to. Ryden cleared his throat loudly, as if asserting control. "Lyria Rain." Her breath stilled. Kieran growled, not loud but deep, the kind that came from instinct, not anger. Ryden pretended not to notice. "Step forward." Kieran didn't move. "She's not being paraded in front of the pack like a culprit." Ryden's lips curved. "You'd go against Council Protocol Alpha Air." Kieran stepped into full view, blocking Lyria entirely. "I'd go against anyone who treats a pack member like prey." A few gasps cut through the crowd. Ryden didn't flinch. Then perhaps the pack should hear precisely why she's being questioned. Lyria felt the eyes on her multiply, curious, worried, suspicious, all blending into a suffocating heat along her skin. "Your elder," Ryden announced, "believes Lyria Rain has been approached by an unknown wolf, possibly from another territory. She may have been targeted or may have given information willingly." Lyria stepped out from behind Kieran before she could think. Gasps met her movement. Kieran's hand shot out reflexively, but she gently pressed it down, not pushing him away, grounding him. "I haven't given anything to anyone," she said, voice steady. "A wolf followed me. I didn't invite it." Ryden raised an eyebrow. "So you admit to contact?" "It wasn't contact," Kieran snapped. "It was pursuit." Ryden ignored him again. "Did this wolf speak to you? Did you speak to him in return? Did you?" His eyes flicked over her, sharp as flint. "Recognize him." Lyria swallowed. She couldn't lie, not with half the pack listening. "No, but I recognize the feeling." A murmur swept the onlookers. Ryden leaned forward. "What feeling?" Lyria glanced at Kieran. He gave a tiny shake of his head, warning her not to reveal too much. But silence now would only fuel suspicion. "A sense of being watched," she said, "for days." Ryden studied her like examining a flaw in metalwork. "And you reported it to no one." "She reported it to me," Kieran said sharply. Ryden's expression cooled. "Convenient." Kieran moved before thought. "Say that again." The air snapped tight. Two warriors stepped forward as if anticipating a fight. Lyria placed her fingers lightly against Kieran's forearm, the smallest touch, but it worked. His breath steadied, shoulders lowering just enough to avoid escalation. Ryden's eyes flicked to her hand on Kieran. Something predatory glimmered there, something calculating. He turned to the crowd. Until we learn the identity of this wolf, Lyria Rain will remain under observation, for her safety. A thin smile. And ours. A cold knot formed in her chest. Observation. It wasn't protection. It was containment. Kieran stepped forward, voice low, dangerous. She won't be boxed in by your paranoia. This is council order, Raiden replied coolly, unless you wish to challenge it. A long silence stretched across the square. Kieran didn't challenge. He didn't back down either. He just stared at Raiden until even the elders shifted under the weight of it. Then Kieran turned sharply toward Lyria. We're leaving, he said quietly. Now. Lyria followed him, but as they moved through the whispering crowd, a prickle crawled along her spine. Someone was watching her. Not Raiden. Not the pack. Someone beyond the square, hidden, silent, waiting. And the moment she stepped out of the council's shadow, the feeling sharpened like a blade sliding close to her ribs. Kieran didn't reach the training grounds. He stormed into them. Wolves scattered the moment they caught his scent. Some backed away, heads lowering instinctively. Others simply pretended to focus on their drills, pretending they didn't feel the violent pulse in the air. Only Lysander remained exactly where he stood, twin swords crossed behind his back, a faint smirk curling his mouth. You're late, Lysander drawled. Kieran's eyes flashed. Say it again. I said. Kieran's fist collided with Lysander's, jaw before the second word fully left his mouth. Lysander staggered back, wiping blood from his lip, laughing softly. There he is, he murmured. The Kieran Frost everyone's afraid of. Kieran's breath was ragged, fury shaking through him, not the clean anger of a warrior, but the unstable, clawing rage of a wolf in pain. Lysander lunged. Steel clashed. Sand kicked up. Growls tore through the air, low and animal. This isn't about your father, Lysander said between strikes. Blads rang. You're not angry at him. Kieran's snarl was feral. Shut up. Lysander blocked a blow, forced Kieran back a step and hissed. It's about her, isn't it? Kieran's vision went white. He slammed Lysander into the ground, knee pressed into his chest, fangs threatening to break through his gums. Don't, Kieran growled, voice breaking. Don't say her name. Lysander didn't flinch. Didn't fear. He only breathed. Why? Because she's the only thing that calms your wolf down. Kieran froze. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Lysander's gaze sharpened. So I'm right. Kieran shoved off him violently, packing like a caged beast. I don't know what she is, Kieran rasped. But she's... He dragged a shaking hand through his hair. She's in my head. My wolf reacts to her like. He swallowed hard. Like she's already mine. Lysander slowly stood, brushing dirt from his arms. And what does Lyria feel? Kieran's chest tightened. He remembered the fear in her eyes. The way she flinched when he stepped too close. The secret she hid behind her silence. She's terrified, he said quietly. And I can't stay away from her long enough to help her feel safe. Lysander stepped forward, voice low. Then control your wolf, before she starts believing she needs protecting from you. The words hit harder than any blow. Kieran's hands clenched. I'm trying, he whispered. But every time she's near, it feels like I'm being pulled apart. Lysander studied him for a long, silent moment. Then he said, You won't win this by fighting me. He tilted his head toward the forest path. You'll win it by understanding her. Kieran exhaled shakily, the rage ebbing but not disappearing. Then I need to find her, he said. Lysander's smile was sharp. You already know where she went. Kieran's wolf surged, impatient and restless. He didn't waste another second. He ran. Straight toward the only girl whose scent could steady his heartbeat and ruin him completely. Lyria didn't mean to run. She only meant to breathe, to get away from the suffocating stares of the pack house, from the echo of Kieran's voice in her bones, from the terrifying way the forest seemed to whisper her name since last night. But her feet carried her deeper and deeper into the woods, until the world thinned into cold air and restless shadows. She stopped only when her palm brushed the old boundary stone, a cracked pillar of granite older than the frostblood bloodline itself. The elders called it the vein marker, a place where magic ran close to the surface. Tonight, it pulsed beneath her hand like a heartbeat. Lyria jerked away. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, sinking to her knees. The wind didn't answer this time. It watched. Her chest tightened. That strange pressure, the same one Kieran had unknowingly spoken of, twisted under her ribs sharper than ever. She pressed her palm to her sternum. "Not now, please, not now." A twig snapped behind her. Lyria spun, and the breath left her lungs. Kieran stood at the edge of the clearing, chest heaving, wildness simmering beneath his skin, as if he'd run the whole way without stopping. His eyes locked onto her instantly. Relief. Fear. Hunger. So many emotions flickered across his face, it almost hurt to look at him. "You came out here alone," he said, voice rough. "I needed space." He took a step forward. Lyria took a step back. He froze. A shadow of pain creased his expression. Not physical, something deeper. "I scare you," he murmured. She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Kieran's jaw clenched hard, his hands curling at his sides as though he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "Lyria, I swear I'm trying," he said. "Trying to give you distance, trying not to overwhelm you, trying to figure out what the hell this bond is." "There is no bond," she whispered quickly, too quickly. Kieran's eyes darkened. "You feel it," he said softly. "I know you do." Her throat tightened. "Kieran, please." He moved slowly, cautiously, each step deliberate, like approaching a wounded animal he desperately didn't want to spook. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "I don't want to be another thing in your life you have to run from." Lyria's breath shook. "I'm not running from you," she said. His gaze searched hers. "Then why are you shaking?" She swallowed. Because the pull inside her chest was waking again. Because the air around him felt charged. Because she could feel, literally feel, his emotions brushing against her skin. Anger, fear, desire, need. She didn't know if it was her imagination or something else. Something wrong. Something old. Kieran reached the boundary stone and stopped there, respecting the invisible line she'd drawn. "Lyria," he said quietly, "I can't fix this unless you tell me what you're hiding." She stiffened. Kieran's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion but in recognition. "You felt something last night," he said. Lyria's breath hitched. "And you feel it right now." His voice dropped lower, almost pleading. "Please, trust me with the truth." She opened her mouth. But the wind roared suddenly, violent and sharp, sweeping around the clearing like a warning. Both of them flinched. Kieran's eyes snapped toward the tree line, wolf rising. "Stay behind me," he growled. Lyria's heart pounded. Because for the first time, the forest wasn't calling to her. It was warning her. And whatever it was warning her about was coming fast. The sound didn't belong to any creature Lyria knew. Not wolf. Not bear. Not wind. It slithered through the trees, low, dragging, like claws scraping the earth behind a curtain of leaves. Kieran moved first. One moment he stood by the boundary stone. The next, he shifted sideways, placing himself between Lyria and the approaching threat with a quiet ferocity that needed no explanation. His voice dropped to a tone meant for command, not comfort. "Stay close to the stone. It's old magic, it'll make anything think twice." Lyria didn't argue. Her back pressed against the carved granite as the cold seeped into her spine. The rustling grew louder. Another scrape. Another heavy drag. Kieran inhaled deeply and froze. That's not ours, he muttered. A chill crept down Lyria's arms. She knew what he meant. Every wolf carried a scent, pack-bound, unmistakable. This one was foreign. A branch snapped. This time, the sound came from the opposite direction. They were being surrounded. Kieran, Lyria whispered. He didn't look back. His gaze was fixed on the darkening woods, his posture poised for violence. His wolf simmered so close to the surface that the pupils of his eyes had thinned into the shape of a predator. Don't move, he said. She swallowed hard. Her fingertips brushed the engraved runes on the stone, symbols she didn't understand, but recognized from the elders' ceremonial hall. Territory wards. Legacy magic. Magic she had no right touching. Kieran's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. 3 shapes, he murmured. 2 to the right, 1 behind the brush. They're testing whether we'll bolt. How do you know? He almost smiled, but it vanished quickly. Wolves don't breathe that loud unless they want to be heard. A shadow slipped between the trees, too tall to be wolf alone, too wrong in its gait. Lyria's nails dug into her palms. Kieran growled, low, human, and dangerous. And the forest stilled. Not quiet. Listening. The shapes began to circle, their silhouettes flickering through the foliage like broken pieces of night. Lyria could make out flashes of fur, dark, matted, uneven. Movements that stuttered rather than flowed. Something was wrong with them. Kieran, she whispered, why do they move like that? Because they're not pure wolves, he muttered. One of the creatures stepped forward. Lyria's pulse lurched. It was wolf-shaped, but its eyes glowed a washed-out yellow, the color of a wolf pushed too close to madness. Its snout twitched repeatedly as though its senses were fighting itself. Kieran bared his teeth in response. Rabid, Lyria asked. Not exactly. The creature lunged. Kieran pushed off the ground, tackling it before she could even gasp. His body collided with the wolf, rolling across the earth in a violent blur of limbs and snarling rage. Lyria pressed tighter against the stone. Another creature burst from the right, snarling, jaws snapping. Kieran, she cried. He couldn't break away. He was locked in a brutal struggle with the first wolf, its claws raking across his shoulder. The second creature barreled straight toward her. Lyria stumbled sideways. Her hand slammed against the carved runes. And the stone flared. Light thin as a blade, burst from the boundary marker, slicing outward in a sudden arc. The creature shrieked and skidded back as if struck by invisible fire. Lyria gasped and yanked her hand away. The glow faded instantly. What did you do? Kieran shouted over the snarls. I don't know. He shoved the first wolf off him and staggered upright, eyes locked on the spot where the rune light had erupted. Lyria, that magic shouldn't respond to anyone. The third creature crept closer now, slower than the others, sniffing the air near her with unsettling interest. Kieran's tone turned urgent. Don't touch the stone again unless you have to. The wolf pounced. Lyria threw up her hands too late. But something else moved before it reached her. The forest wind shot forward like a striking animal, slamming into the creature's flank with a force that sent leaves spiraling into a small cyclone. The creature yelped and crashed into the undergrowth. Kieran froze. Lyria's breath stilled in her chest. The same wind that whispered her name had just protected her. Kieran's gaze whipped toward her, eyes full of a dawning dread. What are you? He whispered. The words hit her harder than any wolf could. And the worst part, she didn't have an answer. Kieran didn't move. Not a muscle. Not even to wipe the blood trailing down his arm. His stare pinned Lyria harder than any claws could have. The question he'd thrown at her, what are you? Hung between them like a blade suspended by a single fraying thread. Lyria forced herself to breathe. I'm not. The words scraped out, thin and unsteady. I'm not anything. I'm human Kieran. The last creature crawled from the brush then, shaking leaves from its mangled fur. Its growl vibrated through the trees, deeper than a wolf's, distorted as if something inside its throat was broken. Kieran stepped in front of her, still facing her, back exposed to the monster. "That magic answered you," he said quietly. "The wind answered you. It was an accident. Magic doesn't accidentally recognize people." The ruined wolf snarled. Lyria's pulse fluttered painfully. She wanted to push Kieran aside, but her legs refused to obey. Her body felt caught between two instincts, flee or protect. Neither belonged wholly to her. "Kieran," she whispered, "turn around." The creature leapt. Kieran spun in the same breath, tackling the wolf midair. They hit the ground with a sickening crunch. Claws tore into his shirt as he wrestled the creature off him, his movements sharper now, less restrained, his wolf driving the fight. Lyria moved without thinking. A broken branch lay near her feet. She grabbed it, sprinted toward them, and swung. Hard. The branch cracked against the creature's skull. It reeled. Kieran took the opening, slammed it to the ground, and snapped its neck in one brutal motion. The forest went still again. No wind. No whispers. Just the rasp of Kieran's breathing as he pushed himself up, wiping dirt and blood from his jaw. He turned toward her slowly. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. Her grip loosened on the branch. "I wasn't going to watch it rip you apart." A flicker of something undefinable crossed his expression. Not anger, not gratitude, something far more dangerous. The creature's body twitched once and lay still. Up close, its fur looked patchy, burned in places, as if its skin had rejected its own shift. The limbs were the right length for a wolf, but the joints bent at angles that made her stomach twist. "What are they?" Lyria asked. Kieran crouched beside the corpse and lifted its chin. The gums were pale, the tongue discolored. He inhaled and grimaced. "Wrong," he murmured. "This is what it looks like when someone forces a shift that shouldn't happen." Her palms grew cold. "Who would do that?" He rose, dusting his hands off. Either someone experimenting with wolves or someone trying to send a message. "A message to you." "To us," he corrected. Lyria stepped back as the breeze flicked her hair forward. It brushed her cheek lightly, almost a comforting gesture, before fatting. Kieran noticed. His brows drew low. "The forest responded to you again." It was barely anything. It wasn't nothing. He moved toward the boundary stone, eyes narrowing as he studied the faint line of char where the rune light had sliced across the ground. "This magic is ancient," he said. "It doesn't wake unless something threatens the territory or someone tied to it." "I'm not tied to it." "You think I don't know the signs?" His voice had softened, but the tension in it remained sharp. "I grew up with the Eld. I know what it looks like when the land chooses someone." "That's impossible." "Maybe, but the impossible just saved your life." Lyria's throat tightened. He stepped closer, slow and steady, stopping only when he was within arm's reach. His scent, pine, steel, storm, grounded her and unsettled her at the same time. "Lyria," he said almost gently, "I need you to tell me if something has been happening to you. Dreams, sensations, anything." She opened her mouth. But a sharp whistle cut through the clearing. Kieran's head snapped toward the sound. A shape approached between the trees, broad-shouldered, moving with the confident stride of a pack wolf. Rowan. His beta. He stopped short when he saw the bodies on the ground. "Hell," Rowan muttered. "I came as fast as I could. We felt the flare all the way at the training grounds. What the damn?" His gaze landed on Lyria. And the sentence died in his throat. Kieran didn't look away from her when he spoke. "We talk about this later," he said quietly. Lyria nodded, though her stomach was knotted tight. Rowan surveyed the scene again. "Alpha, we have a problem." Kieran's voice turned hard. "Say it." These weren't the only ones. Lyria's heart dropped. "More, out here." Rowan nodded grimly. 3 packs reported sightings today. Someone's releasing them near borders. His jaw tightened as he lowered his voice. And one of the creatures had a mark burned into its foreleg. What kind of mark? Kieran asked. Rowan hesitated. His eyes flicked once toward Lyria. Kieran stepped closer, tone demanding. Rowan. The beta exhaled. A tribute mark, he said. From the old rituals, the ones used for offerings. Lyria's stomach turned. She knew that word. She wished she didn't. Kieran's voice cooled, deadly calm. Who was the offering meant for? Rowan's gaze landed on her again, this time with something like sympathy. He swallowed. For the lost bloodline Alpha. Kieran froze. And Lyria felt the world shift beneath her feet. Kieran went still in a way that frightened Lyria more than the creatures had. Not stiff. Not shocked. Alert. Every instinct in him sharpened, as though Rowan's words had reached something buried deep under the layers of Alpha Air discipline. Lyria didn't dare speak. Rowan cleared his throat. We found the mark burned into the creature's skin, same symbol used generations ago to identify, well. Offerings, Kieran finished, voice low. A muscle flexed in Rowan's jaw. Yes. Lyria wrapped her arms around herself. What does that have to do with me? Neither man answered immediately. The forest, traitorous thing it was, stirred behind her, an odd, gentle sweep of air against her shoulder as though urging caution. Or support. She couldn't tell. Kieran finally looked at her. Really looked. Lyria, he said, you were brought to our territory as a tribute when you were a child. Her lungs stalled. That was a story, she managed. A rumor, my mother. Never denied it, Kieran said quietly. Lyria swallowed hard. The ground under her boots felt thin, as if a single wrong step would split the earth open. Rowan stepped forward, softer than usual. These marks showing up now, that's not a coincidence. Someone is invoking rituals tied to the lost bloodline, and the only known survivor of that line was brought here. Stop. It came out harsher than she intended. Rowan did. Kieran's expression tightened, a mix of protectiveness and something darker, a fear he didn't want her to see. He took a slow breath. Lyria, we won't assume anything, but these creatures weren't wandering. They were sent, and they came straight for you. Her stomach nodded. They came for both of us. He stepped closer. Don't do that. What? Don't blur yourself into the pack's problems to make this less terrifying. His voice softened. They came for you, Lyria. Her nails dug into her palms. She almost snapped back, almost told him he was being dramatic. But she couldn't. Not when the creatures had moved with unnatural intent. Not when they had ignored Kieran completely until she'd touched the rune stone. Not when the wind had slammed into one of them to protect her. Rowan bent beside a fallen creature, turning its foreleg to expose the burned symbol. A spiraled line. A broken crescent. A small vertical slash through the center. Lyria stared. Her throat tightened painfully. She had seen that symbol before. A flash of memory. Her mother kneeling beside a riverbank. Her small hand held tightly. A brush dipped in crushed charcoal. A shape drawn quickly across her wrist. Not forever, just for a night. A protection mark, her mother had whispered. A lie, then. Kieran watched her carefully. Do you recognize it? She hesitated. A fraction of a breath too long. Kieran's eyes caught the delay. Lyria. She stepped back. He followed. Not aggressively, but unyielding. Tell me what you remember. His voice was softer than moonlit water, but it pinned her harder than any order. She shook her head. It's nothing, just memory tricks. It isn't nothing, he said. I can see it in your face. Rowan straightened. Alpha, we don't have time. If more of these things are being released, the council will want answers, and they'll start asking questions we might not want them to ask yet. Kieran's focus didn't waver from her. Rowan, take the bodies. Burn them away from the main grounds. Tell the others to double patrol but keep quiet about the marks. Rowan hesitated, but nodded and shifted into wolf form with a ripple of white-gray fur. He gripped one of the mangled creatures in his jaws and dragged it toward the trees, soon disappearing into the brush. The moment Rowan left, the clearing felt too big. Too quiet. Too much like truth was about to break open. Kieran stepped toward her again, closer this time. "Lyria," he murmured, "I won't let anyone hurt you, but I need you to stop holding this alone." She exhaled shakily. "I told you I don't know anything." His jaw flexed. "You're lying." Her chest tightened. "I'm not. You haven't lied to me once since the night I met you." He closed the tiny space between them, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Not until now." Her eyes stung. Not with tears. With frustration. With fear. With something she couldn't name. Kieran lifted a hand but didn't touch her, letting it hover inches from her cheek. "Lyria," he whispered, "if you remember anything, no matter how small, tell me." The breath she drew in felt too thin. Because she did remember something. A night when the forest had gone silent. Her mother pushing her into the arms of a stranger. A whisper. "Hide her." Lyria closed her eyes. "I can't," she whispered. "Won't," Kieran murmured. "Not can't." She opened her eyes. His were bright, sharp, relentless. But not unkind. "Let me in," he whispered. "Please." Her lips parted. A breeze curled around her ankle, deliberate, careful. Urging her forward. "Kieran." The wind stilled. The forest waited. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs, refusing to pick a side between truth and terror. "I." A sharp howl ripped through the trees. Kieran's head snapped toward the sound, wolf instincts blazing. "That's a warning call," he muttered. "Beta signal, something's wrong." Another howl answered. Then a third. Rapid, urgent. Kieran didn't waste a second. "Lyria, stay by me." A crash sounded from the west. Then, a scream. Not wolf. Human. Kieran's expression hardened. He grabbed Lyria's wrist, not roughly, but like contact was the only way to keep her tethered. "We run," he said. And before she could speak, he pulled her into the darkening forest, toward the sound of someone being torn apart. The scream didn't fade. It fractured, breaking into short, gasping bursts that snapped the forest into a panic of rustling wings and fleeing small creatures. Kieran didn't slow. His grip stayed firm around Lyria's wrist as he pulled her through the trees, weaving between roots and fallen branches with the precision of someone who knew every inch of this territory since childhood. "Keep behind me," he ordered, voice low but edged with urgency. Lyria stumbled once on a slick patch of moss. Kieran caught her waist with his free hand without looking back, steadied her, and kept moving. Her breath hitched, not from the speed, but from the scent bleeding into the air. Iron. Smoke. Something acrid that turned her stomach. Blood. Kieran felt it too, his whole posture sharpened, his shoulders tightening as his wolf pressed close beneath the surface. The pupils of his eyes had thinned again, tracking movement she couldn't see. "Kieran," she tried to match his pace. "Who screamed?" "Someone from the patrols." "Rowan." "No," his tone shifted just slightly. "I'd know his voice." They burst into a narrow ravine where the trees thinned just enough for muted sunlight to slip through. A cluster of lesser rocks lay ahead, like toppled teeth scattered across the earth. At first glance, the figure on the ground looked like a heap of cloth. Then it moved. Kieran stopped so abruptly Lyria collided with his back. He lifted a hand behind him, silent command, "Stay." Her pulse hammered, but she obeyed. A faint groan rose from the shape on the ground. Kieran stepped forward cautiously. "Easy," he murmured. "I'm here." The figure rolled slightly, revealing a young male wolf, still half-shifted, fur patchy along his arms, face human but twisted in pain. Blood streaked his side, soaking the ground beneath him. Lyria recognized him. Terran, one of the younger sentinels. Quiet, reliable, always first to training and last to leave. Kieran, Terran coughed, shaking as he tried to push himself up. It came out of nowhere. What did? Kieran knelt beside him, steady hands checking the wound without causing more pain. What attacked you? Terran's eyes darted to Lyria. He flinched away from her. Lyria's breath caught. Not just fear, recognition. As if he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. Kieran noticed. Terran, look at me. Terran forced his gaze back to Kieran, chest heaving. It wasn't like the others, he rasped. It was bigger, faster, not rabid, controlled. Controlled by who? Terran swallowed hard. It wore a collar with the same mark, the old tribute sigil. Lyria's stomach dropped. Terran continued, voice weakening. It didn't want to kill me. It chased me here, then waited, like it was told not to hurt me too badly. Why would they want you alive? Kieran muttered. Terran's trembling hand lifted. Not toward Kieran. Toward Lyria. His voice cracked. For her. Kieran whipped around, placing himself fully between Lyria and Terran's shaking finger. Terran, Kieran said sharply, you're concussed. You don't know what you're. I do, Terran croaked. Alpha, I saw her face, the spirit wind moved with her, and the creature, his breath rattled. It bowed to her. Lyria stared at him, horrified. Terran, I didn't do anything. Terran didn't answer. His eyes rolled back. He went limp. Lyria rushed forward. Is he? He's alive, Kieran said quickly, pressing 2 fingers against Terran's throat. Unconscious, we need to get him back to the pack house. But Lyria wasn't looking at Terran anymore. Her eyes had fixed on something behind him, half hidden in the underbrush. Kieran, she whispered, look. Kieran followed her gaze. The dirt behind Terran was disturbed, dragged in a curved trail, as though something massive had been pulled or had slithered away. And at the end of that trail, the earth was scorched. A perfect circle of burned ground. Large, precise. Like a ritual mark, burned directly into the forest floor. Inside it lay a collar of blackened iron, still smoking. Kieran rose slowly. That's no rabid creature's doing, he muttered. Lyria stepped closer despite her body screaming at her to keep distance. The collar shimmered with faint heat, etched with symbols she didn't recognize, but whose shapes felt disturbingly familiar. The spiraled line. The broken crescent. The small vertical slash. The same mark that had once been painted on her wrist. Kieran's fingers curled as he studied it. This is just someone sending creatures into our territory, he said. This is a summoning circle. She swallowed. Summoning what? He straightened, eyes sharp. Controlled wolves, he said. Dead ones, revived ones, twisted ones. A beat. Whatever fits the ritual's intent. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Then, a heavy thud echoed in the distance. Then another. Not footsteps. Not paw steps. Something larger. Deliberate. Moving through the woods like it had no reason to hide. Lyria tensed. Is that? No, Kieran's voice hardened. That's something else. The sound grew louder. Then, a horn. Low, hollow. Ancient. The kind only the Eld Council used. Kieran's expression darkened instantly. The Elder summoning us. Lyria's chest tightened. Now. They must have felt the summoning circle flare. His gaze flicked to Terran, then back to her. They won't wait. Lyria took a step back. Kieran, I can't stand in front of the Eld like this. They'll know something's wrong with me. They won't touch you, he said, grabbing her hand firmly. I don't care what they think they sense. You stay with me. She opened her mouth to respond. But the horn sounded again. Closer. Sharper. And this time, the wind behind her curled around her spine like a warning. They weren't being summoned. They were being claimed. The great hall doors groaned open, and a wave of expectant silence hit Lyria like a wall. Dozens of elders sat in ascending rows of stone benches, their silver-threaded robes glinting under the lantern light. Their gazes were heavy, assessing, not hostile yet, but watchful, curious, and far too knowing. At the center of the chamber sat the triad of Eld, 3 ancient wolves whose judgment carried more weight than the Alpha King's decree. Elder Meron, the one in the middle, looked the oldest, his skin mapped with age, eyes like polished obsidian. "Lyria Vale," he said, voice echoing across the stone. "You stand before the Frostblood Eld for matters of safety, secrecy, and the integrity of the pack." Her throat tightened. Safety. Secrecy. Integrity. 3 words with 1,000 hidden meanings. Kieran stood beside her, shoulders rigid, presence bristling with quiet aggression. His face remained neutral, but the tension radiating off him was sharp enough to cut stone. Elder Saris leaned forward, her silver braids glinting. "You are the girl who called the wind." A whisper rippled through the room. Lyria's hands trembled. "No," she said quickly, "I didn't call anything." "You think we did not feel it?" Saris asked gently, but not kindly. The forest stirred, the wards trembled, magic that has been silent since the first war awakened in your presence. Lyria's heart pounded painfully. "I didn't do anything," she insisted. Elder Kalen, the sternest of the 3, raised a hand. "Girl," the wind bent itself around you like a shield. "Only one with the old gift can do that." Old gift. The term chilled her. Kieran's voice broke the silence, steady but cold. "She is not a threat. I was with her, I saw everything. She was scared, nothing more." "Fear awakens dormant blood," Meron murmured. "She could destroy the pack if she is not trained," Kalen added. Kieran's wolf surged so sharply the air almost crackled. "If you think I would allow anyone to lay a hand on her—" "Sit down, Alpha Heir," Saris interrupted, lifting a brow. "You are here as her witness, not her protector." Lyria placed a careful hand on Kieran's arm, grounding him. His muscles were bunched tight, ready to fight the entire circle if they even breathed wrong in her direction. Meron turned his gaze to her again. "Lyria," he said softly, almost gently, "tell us the truth, child. When did you first feel the wind answer you?" Lyria's pulse fluttered. They expected an answer. They wanted the truth. But she didn't know the truth. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she whispered. Meron exchanged a dark, troubled look with the other elders. "That," he said, "is precisely what we fear." A chill crawled down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked. Kalen leaned back, studying her as if she were a puzzle piece carved wrong. "Magic like yours should not exist," he said. "It died out centuries ago." Lyria froze. Her mind went blank. Her breath stilled in her chest. Kieran's head snapped toward the elders. "What are you saying?" Saris folded her hands. "We are saying," she replied, voice grave, "that if the wind answered this girl—" Every elder leaned in. "Then the bloodline we thought extinct may have awakened." The hall erupted into stunned whispers. Lyria felt the world tilting beneath her. "What bloodline?" Kieran demanded. Meron's obsidian eyes fixed on Lyria with something like awe and fear. "The bloodline of the Stormbound," he said. Kieran went still. And Lyria felt the wind stir behind her. As if it had been waiting to hear those words, the word Stormbound hung in the air like a crack of thunder. Every elder watched Lyria as if she were a prophecy unfolding in real time, one they weren't prepared for, one they weren't sure they wanted. Kieran stepped in front of her without thinking, placing himself between her and the triad. "What does that mean?" he growled. "What are the Stormbound?" Meron's gaze sharpened. "They were a forgotten bloodline," he said. "Wolves born with elemental affinity, specifically the wind. The first alphas used them as seers, trackers, and sometimes, he hesitated, as weapons. Lyria's stomach dropped. Weapons, she whispered. Saris nodded slowly. The Stormbound could call storms, redirect arrows, silence entire forests. They were powerful, too powerful. That power corrupted some. Others were hunted. Kaelin's voice cut in, cold and clipped. And the line was dissolved, buried, forgotten. But not extinct, Meron finished softly as his eyes returned to Lyria. Not if this girl stands here today shaped by the wind itself. Lyria's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This is a mistake, she said hoarsely. I'm nobody. I grew up outside the pack. I don't have a bloodline. I don't have anything. Kieran turned his head slightly, enough for her to see the tightness in his jaw. You have more than you think, he murmured. Kaelin's gaze darkened. Bloodlines do not vanish by chance. Someone hid you. Lyria flinched. My parents died when I was a child, she said. I don't even know who they were. That, Saris replied, is precisely why we are concerned. Before Kieran could explode again, Meron lifted a hand. Girl, he said gently, look at me. She did, even though she didn't want to. You say you do not understand what is happening to you, yet the wind listens. It bends around you. It protects you. His eyes softened. You cannot deny what we all witnessed. Lyria swallowed hard. I didn't ask it to, she whispered. I didn't summon anything. Meron nodded. That is what frightens us most. A shiver ran down her spine. What are you saying? Kieran demanded. Saris met his gaze. She is awakening uncontrollably. Without guidance, her power may rupture, hurt her, hurt others. Kieran's wolf surged again, but this time there was no outlet for his anger. So train her, he said. Teach her, help her. Kaelin's voice was a cold blade. That is not our decision. Kieran froze. Lyria stiffened. What do you mean? She asked quietly. Meron's expression turned grave. The Eld cannot choose for you, he said. Your magic is too old, too volatile. Only one thing can stabilize a stormbound awakening. A hush fell. What? Lyria asked, barely breathing. Meron's eyes flicked to Kieran. To anchor the storm, he said, you must bind yourself to someone strong enough to hold it. Kieran went utterly still. Lyria's breath shattered. Saris spoke softly, voice deceptively calm. A stormbound without an anchor becomes a danger, to themselves and others. An anchor, Kieran repeated, voice low. Kaelin nodded. A mate bond can act as that anchor, but only if the match is genuine. Forced bonds break, destroy. Lyria felt cold all over. You're telling me, she whispered, that I need a mate to stay alive. No, Saris corrected gently. You need someone whose soul can hold yours when the storm rises. Lyria's knees nearly buckled. And Kieran. Kieran was looking at her like he'd been struck, like something inside him had just clicked painfully into place. Meron's final words echoed through the hall. Your power is awakening, Lyria Vale. Without an anchor, the storm will consume you. Moment they stepped out of the Eld Hall, the night air felt wrong. Too sharp. Too restless. Lyria wrapped her arms around herself, trying to breathe past the tight ache sitting under her ribs. The path leading back to the pack house was empty, lit only by scattered torches that flickered as if uneasy. Kieran walked beside her in charged silence. Not angry. Not calm either. Like a wolf packing inside his own skin. He kept glancing at her hands, her face, her shoulders, checking her without touching her. It made something warm and dangerous coil under her sternum. Finally, she exhaled. You're quiet. Kieran didn't respond right away. His eyes tracked the tree line as if he expected something to be watching them. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. You should have told me. She stopped walking. Told you what? That things were happening when I was near. He faced her fully now. I thought you were scared of me or avoiding me. She stared at the ground, heat creeping into her cheeks. "I didn't want to make assumptions," she said quietly. "And I didn't know if it was one-sided." A sharp breath escaped him, almost a laugh, almost a groan. "It's not." The wind stirred at their feet, swirling faintly around her ankles like a restless pet. Kieran stiffened at the movement, instinct pushing him closer. "Is it happening again?" he asked. "No," she said. But her voice lacked certainty. He stepped closer anyway. "Lyria, look at me." She did, and instantly wished she hadn't. His gaze wasn't storm gray tonight, it was darker, edged with something primal she'd only glimpsed in flashes. His wolf was close. Not violent, not losing control, but focused, locked entirely on her. "You don't need to be afraid of this," he said. "Or of me." "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. Kieran's throat bobbed, as if those words hit somewhere vulnerable. "Then what?" Her fingers curled against her palms. "Needing someone," she said. "Depending on someone. I've survived alone my whole life. I don't know how to trust something as big as a bond." He didn't touch her, but he leaned in until his breath warmed her cheek. "You're not alone now." A beat passed. 2. Then his voice softened even further. "Let me help you carry this." The wind picked up, just enough for her hair to brush against her jaw. She swallowed. "You heard the eld, if I anchor to the wrong person." "It would break you," he finished quietly. "I know." "And you?" she asked. His jaw flexed. "If I'm wrong, it won't just break you. It'll break me too." That admission seemed to surprise even him. He looked away for a second, gathering himself. "My father wants a strategic match," he continued. "Another alpha bloodline, an alliance, but every part of me, every instinct I have pulls toward you, even before tonight." Lyria's heartbeat thudded once, heavy, undeniable. "Kieran," she whispered. "Let me finish." His voice wasn't commanding, just honest, raw. "When the wind answered to you, I didn't feel threatened." He closed his eyes briefly. "I felt like I'd been waiting for that moment, for you." Her breath caught before she could stop it. He opened his eyes again. "If I'm meant to be your anchor," he said, "you'll know it, and so will I." A sudden crack tore through the forest, like a branch snapping under enormous weight. Kieran's head whipped toward the sound, Wolf rising instantly. "That wasn't normal," he muttered. Lyria felt it too, an eerie shift in the air, like distant thunder rolling in a sky that should have been clear. Kieran stepped in front of her. "Stay close," he said. "Something is coming." The wind circled her legs again, urgent this time. Not a warning. A plea. The trees leaned as if listening. Kieran moved first, soundless, purposeful, scanning the underbrush with a predator's precision. Lyria followed a step behind, her spine tight, senses stretched like drawn wire. Another crack split the dark. This one closer. Kieran's voice dropped to a warning rumble. "Something tracking us." "Not someone. Something." Lyria's fingers brushed the air beside her leg, and the wind responded before she consciously summoned it, curling around her wrist in a thin, anxious ribbon. Kieran noticed. "Can you control it?" he asked without looking back. "I don't know." "Then stay behind me." "I'm not hiding while." "Lyria." His tone stopped her, not an order, a plea wrapped in steel. "Please." Her chest pulled tight, but she nodded. Kieran eased forward, muscles coiled, eyes sharpened by the edge of his wolf. The shift tugged at the surface. She heard it in the way his breath shortened, felt it in the faint heat rolling off him. A low growl echoed from the tree line. Kieran froze. "That's not one of ours," he muttered. "They don't growl like that." Before Lyria could ask what he meant, a shape lurched between the pines, massive, hunched, moving with uneven steps. Not fully shifted, not fully human. A half-formed wolf. A rogue. And not a sane one. Its limbs twitched with each movement, bones half broken from an incomplete shift. Foam flecked the creature's jaw. Its eyes were clouded with something feral and something wrong, an infection she didn't recognize. Kieran inhaled sharply. Moonrot. Lyria's stomach dropped. I thought the Eld wiped that sickness out years ago. They tried. His stance widened. But rogues pick it up in border ruins. Starvation forces desperate shifts. It warps them. The rogue staggered forward, teeth bared in jagged disarray. Kieran snapped a glance at her. If anything happens, run straight for the pack house. Don't look back. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. You'll slow me down if you stay. The rogue lunged. Kieran met it halfway. The impact cracked through the clearing, claws against flesh, bodies colliding with brutal force. Kieran threw the rogue to the ground, but it twisted, snapping at his arm with unnerving strength. Lyria stumbled backward as the wind spiked around her, reacting to her racing pulse. Leaves whipped off the ground and spiraled upward in frantic bursts. Kieran. A choked snarl tore from him when the rogue's claws scraped his shoulder. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. Lyria's wolfless instincts screamed at her to move, but she'd never fought anything, never learned how. Yet the wind waited. Like it knew what she needed before she did. Kieran slammed the rogue against a tree trunk, cracking wood. His voice rasped out. Lyria, get back. But she saw something he didn't, not until it was too late. A second shape breaking from the shadows. A second rogue. This one smaller but faster, darting toward Kieran's unprotected side. No, Lyria's voice cracked. The wind roared. Not loud, low, focused, like a narrow funnel pulled tight around her forearm. Her vision tunneled and the air surged outward. A force burst from her palm, invisible but powerful enough to throw the smaller rogue sideways. It crashed into the underbrush, whimpering as branches snapped under its weight. Kieran whipped around, stunned. Lyria, what did you? But the first rogue wasn't down. It lunged again, straight for her. Her breath hitched. She stumbled back until her heel hit a rock, balance wavering. Kieran blurred. In a single motion, he shifted his stance, caught the rogue midair, and forced it down with a ferocity sharper than anything she'd seen from him. The fight was swift, brutal, and ended with the rogue collapsing under him, unconscious. Not dead, but beaten. The forest quieted. Kieran pushed to his feet, chest heaving, eyes still edged with the gold of his wolf. His shoulder bled in thin rivulets. He didn't notice the wound. He was staring at her. Not with fear. With awe, raw and unsettled. Lyria. He breathed, you just saved me. The wind curled gently around her waist, as if shyly agreeing. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trembling. I didn't mean to, it just happened. Kieran stepped toward her, slow and deliberate. That wasn't an accident. His voice carried something new. Recognition. And something even more dangerous. Conviction. Kieran didn't touch her at first. He just stood there, chest rising and falling, blood streaking down his arm, eyes fixed on her like he was seeing a truth he'd suspected, but hadn't dared to name. Lyria's pulse stuttered under his scrutiny. Not out of fear. Out of the unbearable intensity in his gaze, like he was rearranging everything he thought he knew to make room for her. He closed the distance slowly. Lyria, he said, voice roughened by the remnants of his wolf. You didn't just push it back, you threw it. She shook her head, breath uneven. I didn't think, I just reacted. That's how real power behaves. He lowered his voice. Instinct first, explanation later. Her knees felt unsteady. I could have hurt you. You didn't. His tone carried a quiet certainty that steadied something inside her, even as the air hummed restlessly around her shoulders. He lifted a hand, hesitated briefly, then brushed a curl from her cheek. His fingers were warm despite the cold night. Lyria Vale, he murmured, do you understand what this means? She didn't. Or rather, she didn't dare guess. Kieran exhaled softly, trying to gather words that didn't come naturally to him. The Eld said a stormbound needs an anchor, someone who can meet their power without being drowned by it. Lightning skittered across the distant sky, silent, flickering. Not weather. Sir. Lyria swallowed hard. Kieran, we don't know that it's you. He smiled, but it wasn't confident. It was honest, a little raw. No, we don't. His thumb traced a faint line along her jaw, a single slow stroke that sent warmth down her spine. But when you called the wind, everything in me shifted. A short pause. My wolf didn't recoil. He reached for you. Her breath caught, not in a dramatic swoon, but in a subtle, startled inhale she couldn't hide. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see a faint tremor in his hand. Not fear. Restraint. Tell me you didn't feel that pull, he murmured. She tried to speak, failed, then tried again. I did. His eyes softened, a storm easing at shoulders. Then we start there. Before she could respond, a faint whimper drew their attention. The smaller rogue lay half-conscious by a fallen log, curled in on itself. Not attacking, not moving, just breathing shallowly. Kieran tensed. That one's sick, he said quietly, too far gone to shift back. Lyria crouched before she realized what she was doing. The rogue's clouded eyes flicked toward her, but there was no malice, just exhaustion so deep it barely clung to life. The wind eased around her, no longer frantic, curious. What happens to infected rogues? She asked. Kieran didn't answer immediately. Because the truth wasn't kind. They're put down, he said finally. It's a mercy. Moonrot twists the mind until nothing human or wolf is left. Her throat tightened. Is there no cure? He shook his head. None we know. A long silence settled between them. Then Lyria whispered, It followed us for a reason. Kieran frowned. What reason? She touched the ground beside the rogue, not quite touching its fur, but close enough to feel the heat radiating off its broken form. It wasn't attacking at first, it was watching. She looked up at him. Maybe it sensed the storm in me. Kieran's expression hardened, not at her, but at the implication. It won't be the last, he said. Your awakening won't stay secret. Others will feel it. Some will want to use it. Some will want to stop it. She drew in a slow breath, forcing steadiness into her voice. What do we do? He offered his hand. Not as an alpha. Not as a future king. But as someone who had already chosen her long before he had the right to. We go to my father, Kieran said. And we tell him everything. Lyria hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The wind rustled the leaves in a quiet circle around their joined fingers. Not a threat. A vow. The walk to the Alpha's manor felt like crossing enemy territory. Not because the Frost Pack was hostile, but because every instinct in Lyria's body was pulling in different directions. One part wanted to run. Another part wanted to stand tall. And a quieter, stubborn piece wanted to keep her hand in Kieran's forever. They approached the wide stone steps leading to the Alpha's wing. Two guards straightened at the sight of them. Their eyes swept over Kieran first, respect, acknowledgement, and then landed on Lyria. Surprise. Confusion. Unease, faint but present. Kieran didn't release her hand. He squeezed it instead. We're expected, he said to the guards. The doors opened. Warm light spilled across the hall, washing over polished wood floors and ancient frost lineage banners hanging like watchful ghosts. Lyria's stomach tightened. Kieran glanced sideways at her. You sure you're ready? No, she admitted. He huffed a small breath, something almost like comfort. Neither am I. They stepped inside. Alpha Rowan waited near the hearth, arms crossed, posture straight but not rigid. His wolf was close enough to feel, a quiet pressure in the room, a reminder of what real power looked like in human form. To his right stood Lorcan, the beta. To his left, a counselor Lyria had seen only from a distance, sharp-eyed and icy. Rowan's gaze dropped to their linked hands. He didn't speak at first. That silence pressed against Lyria's ribs. Finally, "Kieran," the Alpha said. "Explain." Kieran moved fractionally in front of her, not hiding her, but shielding her from the full weight of Rowan's scrutiny. "She's awakening," Kieran said. "The Eld confirmed it. She's stormbound." Lorcan inhaled sharply. The counselor muttered something under his breath. Rowan didn't react outwardly. He tilted his head slightly. "And the rogue attack?" "It followed her," Kieran answered. "Two of them, one heavily infected. They sensed the awakening." Lyria found her voice. "It didn't come for blood. Not at first. It watched me." Rowan's eyes shifted to her, assessing, unreadable, not cruel but not softened either. "Stormbound awakenings draw chaos," he said. "Your presence alone may pull more rogues to our borders." "I didn't choose this," Lyria replied. Her tone wasn't defensive, just honest. Rowan acknowledged the statement with the smallest nod. Power rarely asks permission. Lorcan took a step forward. "If she's untrained, she's a danger to herself, to everyone. We can't ignore what the Eld said." "I'm not ignoring anything," Kieran cut in. The edge in his voice surprised even Lyria. "I'm telling you she needs protection, guidance. And I'm volunteering to take responsibility for her training." The counselor scoffed. "You, the heir, you'll compromise our alliances over a girl with unstable magic." Kieran's wolf flickered behind his eyes, brief, sharp, unmistakable. "Say her name," he growled. The counselor took an involuntary step back. Rowan lifted a hand. The room stilled. "Kieran," Rowan said quietly, "your decisions affect the entire pack's future. You cannot offer yourself as her." He paused, then said it. "Anchor." Lyria's breath hitched. Not because he was wrong, but because the word carried weight she hadn't fully felt until now. Rowan continued. "Once chosen, such a bond can't simply be undone if politics demand it." "I know," Kieran replied. "I still choose her." Lyria's heart lurched. Not dramatically. Not like a storybook swoon. But in a small, deep way that felt terrifyingly real. Rowan studied his son for several long, heavy seconds. "When did you decide that?" he asked. Kieran didn't glance at her. He didn't need to. "Long before tonight," he said. Lyria's breath tangled in her throat. Rowan stepped closer, gaze landing on Lyria with a clarity that made her spine straighten. "You understand what anchoring means?" he asked her. "I do," she whispered. "Then tell me," Rowan said calmly. "Do you choose him in return?" Her hand tightened around Kieran's. The wind drifted through a half-open window, brushing gently across her shoulder. Urging, nudging, encouraging. She looked up at Kieran. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just waited. And that made the answer clear.